Hi guys, James at Rampant Lion Reviews again for you today with another beer review. For this one, we are going to stick to Sweden and we're going to return to a brewery that's featured on the channel many times before. I've had some really nice beers from these guys over the years, many different styles, but I think it is still fair to say that this brewery are best known for their different kinds of kind of cakey imperial stouts. But they've done some very nice lagers in recent times and they've always done a very solid IPA as well, and their sour beers can be very interesting too. So probably best to describe this brewery as a very solid all-round one these days, and they're also the best known Swedish craft brewery, I would think, as well. But the beer we're going to have a look at today is one of their latest releases through Systembolaget here in Sweden. It's also the latest release from one of my favourite series of beers that they do, and whenever I see these coming out I always get a little bit excited. So needless to say, I'm very curious to see what this one is going to have in store for us. Hopefully it's another good beer. Hopefully it makes for an interesting review. And as always, I hope that you guys watching enjoy my take on this one as well. So yeah, for this review then, we are going to head up towards Stockholm once again, the Swedish capital. We're going to go to Sundbyberg in the northwest of the city to be precise, and that means that we're going to have a look at another beer from Omnipollo. So this particular beer comes from their Bianca series. They're calling this one the Bianca Brunch Bomb, and this comes in at 6% ABV, a strawberry, raspberry, blueberry, maple, pancake, Lassi, Gose. So yeah, I think we've had about maybe 5 beers from this series on the channel before, but this one was released as part of the Tillfälligt temporary assortment through Systembolaget here in Sweden at the very end of February 2023. But yeah, I always keep an eye out for these, and whenever I see them, I just have to have a go, to be honest with you. So yeah, let's crack on with this one then and see what we have. I've always enjoyed the Bianca series, so very much looking forward to this. As always with my reviews then, I'll tell you a little bit about the brewery before we taste the beer. If you want to get straight to the tasting though, just fast forward. All the usual links are in the video description below. That's the brewery website, the link to my other reviews that I've done from Omnipollo in the past, and we will no doubt add more to that list in the near future. But there's all the usual social media down there. If you want to see more reviews, do please consider subscribing to the channel. The support you give is massively appreciated, and remember that you can go into the channel homepage and search for beer based on the geography tagging system. So just go up to the search bar, put your hometown, state, county, whatever you like in there. If I review beers from the area that you search for, they will pop up. Failing that though, you can check out the playlist of beers from different countries. And there are playlists there for many different countries. But you'll find this one in the Swedish playlist along with many other things. And that is, of course, being constantly added to. But yeah, let's go on to my brewery notes then. And I'll tell you once again a little bit about Omnipollo. So, Omnipollo were founded back in 2011 by Henrik Fente, who is a long-time homebrewer, and Carl Grandin, who is a clothing designer. But the two had been good friends, and one day they started talking about making their own brewery, and after having discussed the beer scene in Sweden and abroad, they decided that they really wanted to kind of invigorate it from both a stylistic sense and a gastronomic sense, and so they felt that this partnership between a home brewer and a clothing designer was very logical. And of course, Omnipollo have done very crazy things with beers, using a lot of flavour essences, introducing lots of things into beer that hadn't really been done before. So you do have to say that Omnipollo are a very pioneering brewery. But when it comes to the name, Omnipollo is derived from omnipotent chicken, so Omnipollo, pollo Spanish for chicken, and these guys were gypsy brewers until 2020. They also opened the Omnipollo's Hat in Stockholm a few years prior to that as a collaboration with Pizza Hut, and this has become very popular in the city. They've got a number of their beers there on tap that you can't get anywhere else, and also some very, very good pizza. I have been there twice, if memory serves me correctly. The next time I go to Stockholm, though, I will be doing an out and about video there, so keep your eyes peeled for that. But in 2019, they also opened up another bar in Hamburg in Germany. They had one in Gothenburg as well, which I believe has now closed, and they've opened up a bar in Tokyo in Japan too, which I will need to go and visit actually. But yeah, they have been expanding over the last few years, but the big event came for them in March of 2020 when they announced that they would open their own brewery at Sundbyberg in the northwest of Stockholm, in a former church which had previously been home to Sundbyberg's Sjuksbryggeri. But the brewery capacity when they took over there was started off at around 100,000 litres of beer per year, but they've scaled it up and they now have the capacity to produce around 600,000 litres of beer per year. And they do have a good barrel programme in there as well, from what I understand. Prior to this, a number of their beers were produced at the De Proef Brouwerij in Locriste near Ghent in Belgium. They have produced a number of things at Dugges Brewery in Göteborg, Gothenburg in the past as well. That was where they produced a good number of their stouts, and they also have been producing a number of IPAs and things recently at Total City in Svininge on Sjælland in Denmark too. So yeah, I think they still produce a number of beers in different places, but they have been producing a lot at their own brewery in Sundbyberg now as well. But I need to go up and visit there. There is a tap room at the brewery called the Omnipollo Church, so that is something that I will go and visit the next time I make it up to Stockholm as well. So keep your eyes peeled for some out and about videos up there. But yeah, as of March 2023, when I'm filming this review for you, these guys have produced around 365 different kinds of beer, and like I said to you, they've done many different things. Probably three of the beers I would recommend that you try from them, it would be the Nebuchadnezzar, which was their West Coast Double IPA, the Fata Morgana, which was an oat. Originally it was released as an oat IPA, but that has of course become one of the kind of flagship Swedish New England IPAs, and also the Noah Pecan Mud Pie, or whatever it's called. That is one of their really well known imperial stouts. But yeah, those are probably three of the kind of classic beers you should try from Omnipollo. The Bianca series you can't really go wrong with either, and their Pilsner is pretty damn solid in my experience too. But yeah, that's a good summary, I think, of Omnipollo and what they are all about. They've done a lot of crazy things over the years, and they've had some very interesting beers, I have to say. But yeah, that's everything I can tell you about them for the moment. If you want to learn more, you can of course check out the brewery website. You can follow them on Facebook and Instagram to keep up to date with all the latest goings on, and you can check out the Rate Beer, Untappd and Beer Advocate pages to learn a little bit more about all the different beers that these guys have done. So yeah, let's get on and actually have a little look at this beer itself. So like I mentioned to you at the start of the video, this one comes in at 6% ABV. This one is a Gose, which we know is a German style sour beer with a little bit of salt in it, but they're describing this one as a strawberry, raspberry, blueberry, maple, pancake, Lassi Gose. We've had many beers in this series from them before, about 5 or 6 if I remember correctly. But yeah, the Bianca series is always very interesting. So yeah, plain silver top on the can there, 440 millilitres. I want to say that I paid 100 Swedish kronor for this can, so that's about 10 euros, about £9 sterling, probably somewhere in the region of $11 American, just for those of you watching in different places. But like I say, 440 millilitres. I think this is the first one we've had in a 440 millilitre can, if I remember correctly, because these are normally half litres, and this one was just a little bit cheaper, probably because of the difference in volume. But it says that this one was produced at the Proef Brouwerij in Locriste in Belgium. So yeah, they obviously are still brewing a few beers down there. I actually thought when this was a 440, I did wonder if this had been produced at the Total City in Denmark. But yeah, lovely artwork on this one, as you always get. The Bianca series always has these different kind of feather designs on it, but yeah, you can see it is very nice. Let's get this guy out then, we'll get on with the tasting. I'm just going to invert the can a little bit because these beers can give you a little bit of sediment, and when it comes to these you do want to have as much kind of flavour in them as you can. So we'll get this guy out into the glass and see what it's all about. But I mean, look at this. This is crazy. There are, of course, some very good sour beer breweries in Sweden these days. One of my favourites are from here in Skåne, Elm 11. Anders is a lovely guy, very enthusiastic about his beers, of course. And yeah, you know, those guys, Duck Pond, Morgendagens, there are some, you know, you've got Jackdaw who are doing the really old school Belgian woody type sour beers. They're very interesting as well. So yeah, you've got a great selection of sour beer breweries these days. And meads, of course, are getting more and more popular too. But yeah, this one I have to say, it looks pretty damn interesting. So, before the head disappears, we can see that it's poured with about a 1/3 finger of a frothy, I would say kind of dark crimson purple head. You can see the bubbles on this one. There's some small ones down there, some medium ones on top, and it does look very nice. So yeah, it looks really interesting, this beer. But if you shine the light through this one, you can see when it poured, it's got this lovely dark, I guess on the camera to you guys it probably looks almost black like an imperial stout, but this beer is like a very dark kind of like blackberry Very, very dark kind of blackberry bramble type colour beer. But yeah, one or two big bubbles sticking toward the side of the glass, a few little ones going up toward the surface of the head there, but that head has just faded away to leave you a thicker ring around the edge of the glass, and there's a thin foamy layer on top of that. But like I say, it does look very, very nice. Yeah, I think this goes together. I do think it goes together very, very well, actually. Yes, I think there's nothing else we can really say about this beer, but remember, the colour of your beers depend on a few different things. One, the type of malts that you use. This goes a long way to determining your EBC rating. Two, length of your wort boil is also going to play a role. I mean, the longer you boil the wort, the more you caramelise the sugars, and thus you get a darker colour of beer. But when it comes to sour beers like this, especially the more modern sour beers, it's more down to the kinds of adjuncts that you use. So in this one, you've got strawberries, raspberries, and blueberries. So a lot of the colour in this beer, I think, will be coming from the probably from the blueberries. The raspberries and strawberries will contribute to it, but I think a lot of the darkness you're getting in this beer will be down to that. And it also says on the side, this one contains oats and also some lactose as well, milk sugar. So yeah, this beer, a lot of the colour in this I think will be down to the different kind of fruit adjuncts, and potentially there's some kind of like chocolate malt or something in this as well. Because this is, I think technically speaking, you could call this a smoothie sour, or you could call it a kind of pastry sour as well, actually. But yeah, it should be interesting nonetheless, but we've had very good experiences with this style in the past. Nothing particularly surprising about its appearance, though, I have to say, when you consider what style it is and our experiences with this particular series before, but I think we should take a wee look at the aroma and just see what this one is all about. So yeah, let's do this. Oh yeah, this is really interesting. I mean, as I've said before in these kind of reviews, these sort of modern sour beers, for me, the aromas are usually very straightforward, but that doesn't take anything away from the beer. The beers will always taste very, very nice, despite the fact that they're very straightforward. If they're done right, these modern sour beers can be very, very good. But the backbone of this beer, absolutely, you can smell that kind of pancake batter in there. It's got a little bit of dryness to it. There's maybe a little touch of woody character in there. You've also got the maple syrup as well, just kind of sitting on top of it. And the maple syrup actually smells a little bit dry, but still very sweet. I don't have a massive amount of experience with maple syrup, of course, but still, you are getting these kind of bits and bobs out of it, definitely. So yeah, you've got a backbone of like pancake batter, a little bit of woodiness in there. You know, you've got the maple syrup. You've also got a little bit of a kind of mix of white and brown bread for sure. Above that, there's maybe a tiny little touch of a kind of cocoa nibby dryness, but not too much. I get a lot of kind of sweeter, more leathery brown sugars out of this beer as well, actually. So there's some nice leathery brown sugary characters coming out of this one. And as I say, I do quite like how that goes together. So yeah, nice leathery brown sugars. Bit of a sweeter caramel as well, a little bit of a kind of toasty or biscuity note. Yeah, aroma wise, that does go together very nice. You can certainly smell a little bit of a kind of yogurty petit filou type thing coming out of this one as well in the malt base. But really the dominant factor in this one is the kind of pancake character. But like I've said to you before, Omnipollo, when it comes to these kind of pastry sours and kind of pastry, I guess they weren't originally called pastry stouts, but what these guys do is add flavour essence into the brew. And it's a completely different style of brewing, but the thing with Omnipollo is you've got purists who say, yeah, you should only really use kind of the natural ingredients in this case. But Omnipollo have proved quite a few times that they can do the pure beers very, very well as well. You know, the only barley malt, the Reinheitsgebot type beers, I guess. They've shown that they can do these, so adding flavour essence and stuff into these beers to do something different doesn't bother me, to be honest. But they've shown in this Bianca series, they've got some really creative ideas actually, and really mad things that they can do with these beers. But this one, for me, I think that the kind of pancake batter that you get out of this beer really is quite it really is quite the kind of dominant factor in it. It's really interesting for me. Yeah. So other than that, I'm not sure there is too much to say about the malt base in this one. I'm pretty sure that this beer doesn't contain hops. It doesn't have hops listed on the ingredients for sure. And this is one of the great debates when it comes to these modern sour beers. For example, Vault City and Vault City and Holy Goat back home in Scotland, they use hops in their sour beers and it gives you a bit more complexity, whereas in Scandinavia it's actually less common to use hops in these modern sour beers. And the argument is, yeah, hops can give you a bit more complexity, but they can also take away a little bit from the fruity and sour side of the beer. They can suppress a little bit of that. So it's a kind of balancing game. In the old school Belgian sour beers, they did used to use older. They used hops that had lost a little bit of their alpha acid potency, essentially, when it came to these. But from the smell of this beer, I do get a little bit of a placebo green component. There's a teeny little bit of earthiness for me. And you've also got some nice grassiness in there as well. But then, of course, you start to get the big fruity notes out of this beer. And like we say, it's strawberries, raspberries, and blackberries in this one. For me, I've got a little bit of raspberry sharpness in the kind of top of the nose at the front. You can definitely get the kind of the sort of blueberry character. For me, the blueberry is the mainstay of this one. I get more blueberry out of this than anything else. And the strawberry, there's a little touch of that, but yeah, the raspberry's giving you the sharpness, the blueberry's giving you the kind of big juiciness, and the strawberries there just kind of in the background a little bit. And you've got wee elements of kind of candied fruity characters as well. But yeah, the way that the fruity notes go together in this beer are very, very nice. So yeah, I have to say I do like how this one goes together. It gets a big thumbs up for me, but I've always enjoyed the aroma on these Bianca beers. But let's get the rest of this out into the glass and we'll get started on this one then. So yeah, lovely head on that as well. So as I said, this one is the Bianca Brunch Bomb Strawberry Raspberry Blueberry Maple Pancake Lassi Gose, 6% ABV from Omnipollo in Stockholm here in Sweden. The latest release through Systembolaget as of March 2023, sorry, saying the wrong date there. Let's get stuck in. Slange, skål, cheers. Oh yeah. That's very, very nice. I wouldn't have expected anything less based on previous experiences, to be honest, but yeah, we only get these beers maybe 3-4 times a year. They're always a bit of a treat, and when it comes to them, they're always a bit more expensive, but I always kind of say, just fuck it, why not? That's it, basically. So yeah, this gets a big, big thumbs up from me. Yeah. Where do we start with this one then? Gives you everything that we've had from this series before. It is just very, very nice. Yeah, it's interesting, this one, because when you first take it in, it's very, very fruity, it's very juicy, it is a little bit sharp. And yeah, like I say, just everything pieces together very, very well with it. But then when you go into the aftertaste with it, you start to get the more kind of pastry side of the beer coming out. You start to get the pancake batter and all of this sort of stuff. So yeah, the way this beer goes together for me is awesome. It gets a big, big thumbs up. I wasn't expecting anything less, to be honest. This is one of my favorite series of beers that Omnipollo do. But yeah, this is pretty damn good, actually. Yeah, so we'll break the beer down and go through it as we always do. So, middle third of your palate then, you can feel the backbone of this beer. You have some lovely, you can feel the backbone of it. You've got that lovely kind of smooth backbone. There's a little touch of bread crust to it, but for me it's mainly like it really is like a kind of soft pancake batter type thing, more like an American pancake than a European pancake. So yeah, I love these. I only really ate pancakes again recently in Japan, because they have the American style ones. So yeah, you've got the little bit of bread crust in there. You've got the kind of thick kind of pancake batter base. Potentially toward the front of that middle third of your palate, there's a little touch of woodiness in there. But above the pancake base, you've got a little bit of a kind of wholemeal brown bready character. You've also got a white bready sort of thing in there as well. And yeah, the malt base, the actual kind of malty character in this beer is pretty simple, but it goes together very well. Toward the front of that middle third of your palate, you've got a little touch of saltiness there, and of course that is one of the inherent characters of the Gose beer style. The Goses were they used back in Germany. For example, if you want to learn about this, check out the Riedmeier Gose, if I'm remembering the name correctly. But yeah, these beers were always sour beers fermented in bottles. They put a little bit of salt in them, and then the foam came out, and you'd have a cellar basically full of these bottles with a big foamy layer over the top. So yeah, but these modern Goses are pretty different. They've got a lot of lactose in them, a lot of oats and wheat these days, whereas that was never really the case back in Germany. They had a bit of wheat in them, but never the oats and the lactose and stuff like this. But yeah, you do get a little bit of that inherent Gose saltiness toward the front of that middle third of your palate there, which is quite nice. And then on top of the kind of brown bready layer, you start to get some sweetness out of the beer, so you can feel the maple syrup in there. And for me, the maple syrup flavour is quite leathery. Actually, it's a slightly drier maple syrup, which is kind of interesting. It's got a little touch of woodiness to it as well, which you would expect. But then above that, you've got a kind of circle in the middle of your palate, which I think is also very, very nice. And that's where you start to get the kind of brown sugary aspects out of this beer. So yeah, in the dead centre of your palate, you've got that sweet, you've got that big circle there, and you've got the kind of leathery, you've got a sort of leathery treacly molasses sort of thing underneath, but then you've got the sweeter caramel on top, and potentially above the maple syrup, there's maybe a little bit more of a kind of biscuity character as you go out toward the edges of that middle third of your palate. So yeah, the way that goes together, I think is really quite nice. I think that covers the middle third of the palate, to be honest with you. Let's have a little look at the back third of your palate then. Look at that. So the border region between middle and back third of your palate, you do get a little bit of a kind of bready build up in there. Kind of there's a little bit of it's like a mix of that kind of brown bready character and also the pancake batter. But the base of the back third of the beer, you get a little touch of the kind of bread crust in there, and then you get the pancake batter layer, which is a lot taller and a lot more airy for me, to be honest with you. And then above that, you get a little touch of a kind of brown bready character, which again is a bit lighter and a wee bit more sort of airy in a sense. So yeah, the way that goes together is quite nice too. So yeah, the way this beer goes together from that perspective is nice. Above all of that, the one thing I've noticed that I'm not really picking up in the flavour is I wondered if this beer might have a little touch of kind of cocoa nibby dryness to it. And it has a little touch of that on above the bready layer on the back third of the palate. There's a little tiny bit of a cocoa nibby dryness, and then above all of that, you've got a more kind of you've got a little bit of a more kind of airy, yeasty sort of thing coming out of the beer. So yeah, you've got a little bit of a more kind of airy, yeasty character to the beer. And it's got a wee bit of that kind of brown farmhousey type bready character. There's a little bit of kind of honeycomb and stuff in there as well. But yeah, it's definitely there. So on the back third of the palate, as I always say, the back third of the palate is taller. Then as you come further forward into the middle third of the palate, things just kind of condense down and squash together that wee bit more. So yeah, I think that is very, very nice. On the hoppy side of things then, like I said earlier, I really, from having tasted the beer, I suspect this one doesn't have hops in it because it's very, very smooth along the sides of the palate there. So yeah, on the hoppy side of things, you do have a little bit of placebo effect in this one, but there is a sort of nice smoothness to it as well. And it's the fact that the smoothness that's there tells me there's not hops in this, but you still have that little bit of placebo effect in there. So there's a little touch of earthiness for sure. As you move further forward, there's a little bit of herbal character, and as you push toward the kind of front corners of your palate, it remains very, very smooth, but there's a little touch of floral aromaticity on the front corners of the palate. Then round the front curve of the tongue, it's a little bit lighter and more grassy as well. So yeah, I do quite like how that pieces together. Yeah, it's interesting. It's definitely interesting in that regard. On the but like I said, the smoothness really tells me it's there's not hops in this one. I think this beer, you just get that complete smoothness on the side of your palate, so there's not really hops, and we talked about that earlier in the video about the reasons for and against using hops in these beers. But I always find you do get a little bit of that placebo effect, because you know it's a beer you're drinking. You do have some of these ideas in your mind. I guess the power of suggestion. But yeah, I think that covers the kind of edges of the palate there. Let's focus on the front third of your palate and the kind of fruity side of things then. So that border region between front third and middle third of your palate, you get a nice little bit of a kind of bready build up in there. And it has a little bit of pancake batter to it, but it also has a little bit more of that kind of wholemeal brown bready base. The backbone of that front third of your palate, you've got a smooth kind of bread crusty note in there. You've got a little bit of the pancake batter on top of that, and then you get the fruity notes coming out of the beer. So for me, there's a little base of a kind of oily fig. Like I said, we don't have hops in the beer, so you don't have that oily kind of estery fruity character that you would expect otherwise. So yeah, that's definitely an interesting point to make about this particular beer. So within the fruity notes of this one, you can feel, for me, it's actually quite similar to what I was expecting from the aroma. You can feel, for me, the strawberry is a little bit like the anchor of the beer. So the strawberry kind of forms the base layer of it. And then above that, you've got the raspberry sitting. I think the blueberry gives you a lot of... You've got the strawberry forming the base, then I think the blueberry sits on top of that, and the raspberries above all of that. So it's quite layered on the fruity side of the beer. You have strawberry, blueberry, then raspberry. And as you come further forward on that front third of your tongue, you get the sharpness, the kind of more tart characters out of particularly the blueberry and the raspberry there. And you can feel that a bit of the strawberry juiciness, that actually spreads around the edges of the palate there. You can feel that just spreading around the edges of your palate, but then the blueberry and raspberry are giving you the tartness on the front tip of your tongue. And that's another thing you have to think about when you add fruit into beer as an adjunct. It always suppresses a little bit of the hoppy side of the beer, and that's one of the arguments actually against using hops in these modern Gose and Berliner Weisse type beers, and you can really see that in this one. So like I say, the strawberry note for me spreads around the edge of the palate. It's very layered. Strawberry in the base, blueberry, then raspberry, the tartness on the very tip of the tongue, and yeah, other things around the side of the palate too. But yeah, the way this beer goes together, is very, very nice. I certainly have enjoyed this one. So I think we can round off this review with a wee look at the mouthfeel. So yeah, mouthfeel wise, yeah, it's full bodied, this one. I don't think there's any doubt about that. Carbonation is very, very smooth. It's got a very kind of, it's a mix of silky, but it's a very oily and kind of just thick mouthfeel. So I have to say it's very kind of saucy almost in its mouthfeel actually, which is kind of interesting. But in terms of IBUs, I think technically speaking this will be 0 IBUs. But you probably got 5 IBUs or something like that in it. The malt base, as we said, is it's got a touch of dryness underneath, but mainly it's quite smooth, and it develops a bit of sweetness the further into the aftertaste you go. But the sweet character in this one does have that little touch of dryness to it as well, a little bit of a leathery character. And then above everything else, you've got that nice kind of fruity note coming out of it. So yeah, the way everything pieces together in this beer for me is really nice. And as I said, it's definitely up there with what we've had from the Bianca series before. It meets the kind of benchmarks that I have for that style, and I think Omnipollo have done very well with this again. So yeah, I think that's everything we need to say about this one. The fruitiness is lovely and balanced as well. Lovely little bit of juiciness, but also the wee bit of tartness and things. Yeah, I really do like how this goes together. So a big thumbs up from me. But yeah, I think we can leave it at that for this one. So this one was the latest installment from the Omnipollo Bianca series. This is the Brunch Bomb Strawberry, Raspberry, Blueberry, Maple, Pancake, Lassi, Gose. Gose pastry stout, not a pastry stout, a pastry Gose sour at 6% ABV from Omnipollo in Sundbyberg in Stockholm here in Sweden. So yeah, once again, thank you for watching my beer reviews. Until the next time, please like, subscribe, share, all the usual YouTube stuff. Let me know your own thoughts on this beer in the comment section below. Let me know what your favourite beers are from Omnipollo as well, and we will return to these guys at some point in the very near future. But until then, Slàinte, Skål, cheers, see you guys in the next review.